So we're now going to spend a little bit of time doing something that, as Oren alluded to earlier, is called a pecha kucha style presentation. Pecha kucha, or 20 by 20. A pecha kucha, or 20 by 20 presentation, is a presentation in which the presenter has 20 slides, each of which will be on screen for only 20 seconds. So each has, what's the math, 6 minutes and 40 seconds to tell their story. And those slides advance regardless. It's meant to be fun, less formal, not super interactive necessarily, although each presenter will do their own or bring their own flavor to it. But an opportunity for you all to hear about some things that are happening both inside the foundation, also from Bowl City Learning. And so, but this can be hard. This is a challenging presentation format if you've never done it. So big kudos to all four of these folks who have willingly, or maybe we bent some arms, I don't know, who offered to do this. We will first hear from Cara Laverde, who will talk about design thinking and learning challenges. After Cara, we will hear from Michael Woodward with Bowl City Learning. Following Michael, we will hear from Amy McDonough as part of the vaccine delivery team. And then finally, we'll hear from Jim Tazinski, who's part of the U.S. program. These all look great. I've been able to preview some of them, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing them in person. We'll have just a little bit of transition between each one to get the presenter mic'd up and ready to go. But otherwise, enjoy your lunch, hold on tight, and have a lot of fun. First up, Cara.
Okay, hi everybody. This is my first pecha kucha. Woo! So off we go. I'm Cara Laverde, and I work here at the Foundation on the Learning, Leadership, and Organization Development team. And I'm going to talk to you today about using design thinking in your instructional design process. So I'll talk about what design thinking is, why you would think about using it in instructional design, and then share an example of how we used it in leadership. But first, I love pizza, and I love Pagliacci pizza here in Seattle. And the ordering process is designed for the end user. It takes about 1 minute from, hi, am I speaking to Cara, to we'll see you in about 35 minutes. It's beautiful design and totally created for the end user. I have been working in the learning space for more than 20 years now, and I have used pretty traditional models for instructional design, including our friend Addie here. And this really, for me, was putting users at the periphery. So I would engage them up front in analysis and maybe again in pilots later on. But what I really craved was getting into the end user's shoes, getting in their shoes. What is it like to be you in your job? What is it like to be you in your organization? What challenges are you facing in application? I really didn't have any idea. And then I discovered something called design thinking. If you do a Google search or a Bing search, you'll get 59 million hits. It's known also as user-centered design or human-centered design. And there are a variety of organizations that have methodologies, including IDEO and the Luma Institute, as well as the Stanford Design School. At its core, it's about deep empathy for your end user. So this really appealed to me as I'm a social worker. It's about designing for people and the needs of people and the needs of the organization. And if you're working in a volatile and agile environment, which I think we all are, it's a nice iterative approach that's flexible. So in my design practice, I have primarily used the Luma Institute's tools, although I draw from a number of sources. And as you can see in their model here, it's made up of looking, understanding, and making. And there are various method sets you can put together using Luma's framework based on your custom design. An example of looking is using ethnographic interviewing, which I imagine some of you have done. And what makes this different than typical interviewing is it's all about really, again, standing in the end user's shoes. What do they really want? What matters to them? What's important to them? What kind of challenges are they facing? An example of an understanding tool is something called the problem tree. And this is a problem framing tool so that you can understand, is this even a training issue? Is training going to solve the problem? And you list root causes down below the problem statement and then symptoms above the problem statement so that you get to a clearer idea of the problem. Here we have a concept mapping tool. This is called the Creative Matrix, and it's a making tool, and it allows you to generate a lot of ideas very quickly. So you look at the intersections of different concepts and come up with a rapid number of ideas. So I want to share the example of how we've been working on a leadership development program here using some of the Luma tools. So these are some of the Luma tool sets, and you can put together method sets based on the problem that you're working on. Now, here are our Gear Up leaders in our leadership development program this year. They were handed data and asked to recommend new leadership principles to our CEO. This is a mighty challenge. And they came up with 3 leadership principles that we are now working with. So these are the 3 principles. And upon landing on these, we realized we need to now know how to assess against them and develop to them. So several of those leaders joined with us in learning and development to really figure out how are we going to do that. We dug in together, and at the beginning of our design process, we had a lengthy kickoff meeting. We did some interviewing of those people in the room. We did some concept mapping. We looked at a lot of research. We spent time framing the problem and talked about our must-haves, which are pictured here, based on the users in the room. So we sketched out what a possible program could look like. And we literally carried around this piece of paper to a number of different stakeholders, both internally and externally, and collected more than 80 pieces of separate feedback that we then iterated and integrated into a version 2 model. The version 2 model we put in our work area, and we would bring stakeholders by. I think I bothered all of my teammates by lots of stakeholder meetings at the whiteboard, but really ended up coming up with a custom program that was designed for us rather than lifted and shifted externally from a consulting firm. The new approach to leadership development is grounded in 4 essential beliefs you see there, that we need adaptive leadership capabilities like self-awareness, right? That collective success and an inclusive approach to learning, and then we're really excited about open source and opening leadership development eventually to the field. So we are at the end of piloting, but we went out with pilots that were about 75% baked, and this felt somewhat risky at the foundation. We hadn't done that before, but we told people, thanks for being our guinea pigs, we're excited to get your feedback, and we had great response. So we're toward the end of piloting now, ready to roll out our new program, which is called RISE, which launches in 4 short weeks. We're super excited, and as we roll out phase 1, we will be working with our users on designing phases 2 and 3. So it truly is an iterative approach. We continue to engage our stakeholders. They now sit on an advisory board for us. So if you're interested in dabbling in design thinking like me, I encourage you to check out IDEO, the Luma Institute, Stanford Design School, and just start some small experiments on your own. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Woodward. I'm a colleague of Nathan Pinkowski's at Bull City Learning and excited to present to you today an innovative training solution called Immunization Academy. In the next 6 minutes, I'll do my best to describe a little bit about what it is, how it came about, and where we're going. But please allow me to begin with a quick story from my personal life. About 2 weeks ago, I ran into a problem. The front right headlight of my car went out. It's a 2004 Honda Pilot. I consider myself decent with my hands, but I could not find the owner's manual. So optimistically, I opened the hood, looked under, thought I could figure this out. Sadly, not the case. So there I was, stuck in my garage, stumped. So what does any person do these days when they have a question? Of course, I asked the internet. Within a few keystrokes on my phone, I was watching a guy named Chris on YouTube walk through a step-by-step video of the exact same car, the exact same headlight. In about 5 minutes, my solution was solved, and my faith in the internet reaffirmed. So today, somewhere in Africa, immunization professionals are trying to solve various problems. A district manager, for example, may try to figure out why their coverage rates are low in a certain area. Or a frontline healthcare worker may determine whether a particular vaccine is safe to use as a multi-dose vial. And the Ministry of Health is trying to figure out how to train resources, their entire system with limited resources. What options do they have? If you're a district manager, you could sign up for the next MLM training. maybe in the next 12 or 24 months. If you're a healthcare worker, you could try to find a 250-page printed training document you may have put in a drawer somewhere. And if you're the MOH, you may wait to secure additional funding or simply rely on cascaded training. We have a new solution.
Tasks. Reading the current temperature on your fridge tag. This is a fridge tag device. To find the current, second important task is to find the highest and lowest temperatures for the day. To do that, you will use the read button. Start by pressing the read button.
So this example brings a solution that is short, hands-on videos for immunization professionals when and where they need them. It consists of two main components. First, a platform that enables quick and easy access to training videos, and then the videos themselves, which are 2 to 5 minute practical step-by-step tutorials on a variety of immunization topics. Immunization Academy offers a number of benefits. First, open, easy access to fast, effective immunization training. It can be used online or offline. It can be viewed on a computer, a tablet, or a phone. Always has an expanding selection of videos, and it supports the goals of the African Regional Immunization Strategic Plan. In addition, the platform supports multiple languages, currently English, Swahili, and soon to be French. You can search by keyword to find a video. You can add that video to a watch list. You can provide comments or discuss topics with other users within the system, view and download supportive documentation, and even see recommendations for other videos based on your interests. So how can Immunization Academy best be used? For managers, it can be an effective tool to supplement supportive supervision. A number of videos could be downloaded to the manager's laptop and then shared with a single individual or a small group in the field. The videos could target specific training needs for an individual healthcare worker or areas of need for an entire clinic. What about for healthcare workers? Well, it can be used for either independent learning or performance support. Healthcare workers could reference the videos on their own time at a location of their choosing to expand their own knowledge, or they could use the videos as a refresher or a reference at the point of need on the job, for example, when completing a monthly immunization report. These videos also can be used to support classroom training. They're excellent visuals for reinforcing key points, facilitating discussion, or providing a practical guide for a specific lesson. The system can also be used to download relevant templates that help immunization professionals do their jobs, things like tally sheets, temperature monitoring charts, and even microplan templates. So how do we go about developing Immunization Academy? Well, we followed a human-centered design approach, just as mentioned before. We first interviewed our users, district and regional immunization officers in Tanzania, as well as leaders of the IVD program about their specific training needs. We created demos and prototypes and shared those with targeted user groups during a series of in-country focus groups. That continual process helped shape the development of our solution. The videos themselves are based on WHO-approved content, and early on in the drafting of that content, we established a technical working group of global immunization experts. That group provided both their expertise as well as the insights and real-world examples to help ensure the videos truly reflect the type of work immunization professionals are doing in the field. So where are we now? Version 1.0 was recently released. It includes 40 videos on a series of data monitoring topics. Titles include tools for monitoring vaccine delivery, how to complete an immunization register, how to complete a tally sheet, how to plot and read a coverage monitoring chart, and we are currently in the final production stages of translating those 40 videos into Swahili. So we're also in the early stages of our initial rollout plan. That effort is currently focused in Tanzania and involves direct outreach to both regional and district immunization officers. And however, as an online platform, we're also taking full advantage, as you see on the YouTube channel here, of existing video channels to help raise awareness. So what's next? We are currently finalizing our draft transcripts for 40 new videos on supply chain topics and are planning to go out and film later this month. These videos, along with additional system functionality such as rating videos and sharing videos with others, will be available by the end of the year. What's our long-term vision? We're hoping that others, including whether it be governments and or partners, will contribute their own videos to the system. The platform includes an interface for content providers to both easily upload and tag their videos. So over time, we hope that the catalog of videos could grow exponentially such that this is a comprehensive resource for just-in-time training for immunization and performance support. So innovation can mean a number of things, but I think sometimes the best solution is to make something simpler. We hope that Immunization Academy does this by helping immunization professionals across the globe find immunization training and resources where and when they need it. As my 9-year-old son once said when I showed him the platform for the first time, he's like, "Dad, this is like YouTube for medicine." It's like, close. YouTube for training, YouTube for Immunization Academy, YouTube for immunization professionals. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Amy. I've been interning with the vaccine delivery team this summer. So most of our trainings in immunization currently look something like this, involving death by PowerPoint. So this summer I've been looking at how the private sector and companies in the private sector are approaching training and learning with their employees to see what lessons learned there are for us to improve our trainings. So I've been speaking with training and learning representatives from companies. They're doing a number of really interesting things to engage their learners right now. Many of which we've talked about today. I'm just going to highlight 2 examples from my research that show how these are being put into practice. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying any of this should be slapped right on our trainings given very different resources and context, but I'll just try to plant some seeds for us to think about. So we've looked in immunization to Coca Cola to learn how their supply chain gets Coke to some of the most remote parts of the world, but I wanted to look at how they train their people. So I looked at how Coke bottlers who produce and distribute Coke across Africa are training their employees. So I spoke with Coke bottlers in Ethiopia and South Africa, and they utilize a 70-20-10 blended model of learning as a framework for training with their employees. So say you're a newly hired merchandiser in Ethiopia, you attend the training facility in Addis for several months, and you start with just a short bit of formal classroom training, and then you're put right into practice. So the training facility contains a model shop that looks just like your work environment, and you work in groups through case studies and role plays to practice things like greeting a shop owner or fixing an outlet. And you're then sent to the field for job shadowing and on-the-job training, and you have a manager alongside you for coaching. So job shadowing is heavily utilized, but it can be unstructured. So Coke bottlers provide a shadow guide to help their employees drive this learning process. So it includes who they should be meeting with, questions to ask along the way, and their learning goals throughout, so they're guided along the path. So all of the learning from the Coke bottlers is incentivized by career growth. So even if you travel for a training, you do not get per diem, which is very different from the incentives in our immunization system. But all of this is tied to a very transparent career growth ladder and a way to link their learning to their performance. So the Coke bottlers are committed to making all of this a very continuous and employee-driven process, and they have some tools to guide this. So they're in the process of rolling out learning pathways, similar to what we've discussed today, which each employee receives, and it summarizes the competencies that they're expected to obtain along a pathway. And this is tied to a competency assessment framework, so they can see exactly how they'll be evaluated based on the competencies they've gained. So the Coke bottlers show an example of the importance of providing opportunities for hands-on learning and on-the-job training. 70-20-10 isn't a magic formula, and it should be carefully adapted to meet the learner's needs, but it helps us think about diversifying our training methodologies and better matching what it takes to actually perform on the job. And it also shows a way to help employees own their learning and a competency-based evaluation approach. This, of course, is all reliant on a strong HR foundation on Coke's side, so it challenges us to look beyond training at what elements there are in the broader system to fully support our learners. So next I want to turn to an example within immunization, which is the STEP program. It was started by UPS and other partners in 2015, and it's a leadership training program for supply chain managers, about 40 of whom have participated so far. And it was started in recognition of the fact that we train so heavily on technical content in supply chain and immunization, but not on those soft management and leadership skills that really keep a team well-oiled. So it focuses on that. It also takes a blended approach. So it starts with a month of self-paced distance learning, and then that's followed by a highly interactive 5-day in-person session that focuses on things like emotional intelligence and problem-solving skills. And so it's not a lecture session. It's a unique interactive session that involves case studies where they get the answers up front, and they have to work with their groups to figure out the leadership and management process that they would use to get to that end result through things like good feedback and communication. And they actually practice out those skills, so they're simulating what it actually takes. So all of these sessions are led by facilitators. They're deliberately not called trainers because they're there to guide the learning process and the facilitation between the learners rather than any sort of lecturing. And they're supply chain experts from UPS, so they have that connection on the technical content and can build rapport with the participants. So following those sessions, the participants design a 3-month project that allows them to actually apply these skills back into their teams in their home country. And they're paired with a private sector mentor for continued guidance and supervision. And so the feedback from these trainings so far has been impressive. As you'll see on the next slide, participants have been able to do things like implement an improved stock management plan in Rwanda to developing SOPs for supply chain management in Zanzibar. Again, not through technical content, but by being able to put in practice those softer skills. So STEP helps us think about whether we're training for the full skill set required for our systems to really work. Only a small supply chain focused group has been trained so far, but extending the benefits of these strong management and leadership skills more broadly could present huge opportunity to cascade across the system. And it also shows the importance of intentionally designing the delivery method based on the need. So delivering that 1 month of pre-course content frees up time for interaction during the in-person session. So these were just 2 examples. I've looked at a number of companies doing interesting things like McDonald's utilizing micro-learning and on-the-job training, to Sears doing gamification. I'm happy to share my final report and recommendations, but I hope I've just planted some seeds in our minds to think about. And I want to close with 2 salient points that came up repeatedly in my conversations. The first, many of the companies I spoke with are on a broad level looking to move beyond event-based training to more continuous learning opportunities that really match their employees' needs across their full pathway, like we've discussed today. So the idea of a training as an event simply doesn't support our learners fully. And the second echoes multiple presentations we've heard. Many of the companies I've spoken with took a user-centered design approach, and their first step was just to talk to their employees for their input. So as we seek better strategies, I hope we can continue to engage all of our stakeholders, from the rural health workers to the national level, so that we can work toward more informed solutions together. Yeah.
So my name is Jim Pazinski. I'm the Senior Fellow on the Post-Secondary Success Team. And one of the things I tried to do in developing this presentation was to better understand, how we might be alike. Your team is very different than obviously the post-secondary team, but there's some things that we share, and I want to talk about how digital learning is used by our constituencies and might be able to be used by yours. So one of the things I thought that was similar is that, we as former faculty members and teachers on the post-secondary success team, we tend to needle our students with questions and quizzes and tests. And you all, do it a little bit more directly. But there's some other things that also make us similar with respect to the jobs that we must do in our work. So one of those things is, how do we transmit effectively information? Effectively, efficiently, at the right time in the right place, so people can utilize that for their jobs. We may call it education, instruction, training. The fact of the matter is we share that same goal of getting information out to folks. And we have some of the same problems in getting that information out. And a lot of it has to do with the kind of systems, the traditional systems are in place. In many cases you're dependent upon the instructor, and if you don't have enough instructors, you can't reach as many people. You're limited by the amount of space that you have. You may be training 500 people like in this situation, but you may want to train 5,000 people, and you're constrained by physical space and having it at a specific time. Another problem with traditional training is the fact that who's learning? Is it the person that's smiling at me right now? Do they really understand this material, or is it because they're thinking about lunch? Or the person frowning at me, or is it because they just had their bicycle stolen? So how do we know whether or not people in the audience, in the student group, are really learning effectively? And how can we personalize it for every single person that we're working with? Another problem is, who do we teach to? You have some people who are really advanced on that particular subject. Some people are falling behind, and then there's some folks who are kind of in the average. So do we teach for the average folks, and therefore frustrate the folks at either end of the spectrum? How do we really personalize it for every single student that is in the classroom? So one of the things that we do as faculty members and instructors is we provide practice critique, whether you're learning a new sport, immunization technique, or a new model in finance. It really requires that practice or critique. and unfortunately, it's expensive and hard to do that when you're limited by the number of faculty members or instructors you have. Well, one of the things that we have looked at and started to inculcate is next generation digital learning. It's not about putting robots in the classroom, although that may come someday, especially how advanced Alexa seems to be. And it's not about old style drill and kill. And if many of you ever had 1990s style digital courseware, you probably had some things that look like this. When I used to be an MBA faculty member, we used to give this to our students. And it's very linear. You go through the pages and you answer some questions. But regardless of how well you do, you're on that same path. So it gets very boring after a while. So that's why we called it drill and kill. Excuse me. Today, though, there's these very advanced digital learning tools that provide a lot of these capabilities as far as adaptability. If you're answering the questions correctly, you may go quicker in a program. If you're having some difficulty, it may push you off to the side and really help you integrate that material before you go on. Gives you more feedback, customization, collaboration. So these new tools that provide a lot of these different capabilities. It's really kind of a radar both for the faculty member as far as the students, to see where those rocky shoals are up ahead and how can the faculty member change things around to be more effective for the students in their classroom, as well as giving the same kind of radar to the students to know how well they are doing and what they can do to remediate or improve their performance. Now, this is at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and this is Dr. Kelly Hogan, and she has eliminated the differences between first generation, economically disadvantaged, and underrepresented minority students in these large-scale biology classes. They're all doing equally well. And in part, it's done by the utilization of digital learning tools. So here's an example where Dr. Hogan would give out a question, the students would answer it on their phone, and only 11% got the right answer. And she can see with this digital learning environment which students got what answer. Then give a little mini lecturette to help remediate, then ask the question again, see that now 74% have gotten the right answer and which students have gotten that. So all of a sudden can really target where she needs to do interventions instead of a long lecture, really do these micro lectures. Here's an example of one of the tools, McGraw-Hill's Connect, where the instructor can actually drill down on individual areas to see how well individual students are performing, as well as how well the assignments they're giving out, how well those assignments are doing, and be able to get deep understanding and information on every single student. Here's an example of where they can see across a semester, various chapters, how much time students are spending on individual areas, as well as an at-risk report. Now this was a class I taught, so there's no students at risk, but you could see when you have a large class, it will help identify those students that I may need to reach out to because they're having difficulty with the material. Another benefit of digital learning is the fact that many of them come with large test banks, and I can filter these by the difficulty of the questions, the learning objectives that I have set out, etc., and therefore build up these large practice tests for the students that gives them that practice critique that they need, but doesn't burden me as a faculty member to have to grade every single one of those. I'm going to be grading some other things. It allows me to do high performance work. Also, it allows me to see what are the questions that students are having real difficulty with. It may not be that it's bad lecturing or case study, etc. It may be some bad questions. So it allows me to focus in and see, okay, what are the questions they're having difficulty? If most students are having difficulty with it, it may be a bad question. At the same time, the digital capabilities allow me to go really deep on the content. If I can see this piece of content is attached to this learning objective and this question, how well is that content doing? And then I can go in and see how many students are getting it correctly, how long it's taken them, what are their attempts, etc. And so the deep understanding of where it is everywhere through the ecosystem of learning. So basically, to wrap this up, digital learning is able to assess, or rather address, a number of different things. Teaching to a diverse body of students, making it much more personalized, making the practice critique easier for students, as well as providing this radar both for students and faculty members to see how the learning process is going. Thank you.